This is Eitan Weinstein.
And I'm Naor Menninger, and you're listening to Two Nice Jewish Boys.
The New York Times has never been a great friend of the Jewish people. 80 years ago, for example, during the Holocaust, what was arguably the most important American news outlet didn't do much to expose its readers to the atrocities that led to the Holocaust, nor to the atrocity of the Holocaust itself. What's even more amazing is that the publisher of the New York Times during that period was a Jew, Arthur Hays Sulzberger. In modern times, it seems like the Times constantly takes the pro-Palestinian angle, even when it means spreading actual fake news. Only a year ago, in a list of the child victims of the war in Gaza, the New York Times included a photo of a kid who died 7 years prior in Ramallah. That is why our guest today, renowned Maariv columnist and author Lilac Sigan, has decided to take it upon herself to carefully trace the New York Times coverage of Israel on a day-to-day basis, and to conclude once and for all how biased they actually are. We're super happy, super thrilled to have Lilac here with us today to talk about the New York Times, to talk about Israel, and to talk about fake news. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
So how did it start, this endeavor?
Well, the truth is, it actually started about 20 years ago, maybe even 22. During the second Intifada, I took some time off of work then. I had 2 little girls at home, and you know, I was on the internet a lot. It was actually the beginning of internet, really, that we didn't really do that before. And suddenly, you know, you could read the New York Times from Israel. It was a new thing. And I was following it. It was just the beginning of the second Intifada, after Prime Minister then Barak offered a very generous deal to Yasser Arafat, who in return started the second Intifada. And I saw how it was covered in the New York Times, and I was at awe. You know, I didn't go to the history. I didn't have I didn't have an opinion about the New York Times. I always thought it was a great paper. I'm not a right-winger, by the way. I define myself as a centrist. I was pro a two-state solution. I don't come from the pro-Israeli, super patriotic place.
Hasbara.
Yeah, I'm not there. I'm just, you know, I believe in fairness. I believe in journalism. I have a hard time looking at journalism and what's happening to it today, not only in the New York Times, but also in Israel and also in other outlets, and how opinions have become more important than facts, which is a terrible thing because it means we don't really know what's going on. And, you know, when we do know what's going on, we get really angry when we see, you know, a certain coverage and agendas that we know aren't really true and don't portray the true situation. But you know, so I think it's terrible. Also, I come to do this as a journalist because I believe in truth. I believe in objectivity, although I know there's no such thing, you know, no such thing as pure objectivity. There's always some sort of bias. But I believe in at least aspiring to be objective. Mm-hmm. And I think we lost that in the past couple of decades. And I think it's terrible. And so, okay, so that's when it started. But
the trigger?
The trigger was, you know, it's funny. And I've been following the New York Times. And at some point I was like, oh, I'm just not going to read them. You know, I'm not going to read it. It's upsetting. I don't like it. I'm just going to kind of push it aside. And then at some point there was a new government in Israel, and you know it was hard for me to connect to some of the slogans and agendas of the prior government, and suddenly I was more able to be pro-Israeli from my outlook, just from the centrist place and from the place of fairness and objectivity. And I started reading the New York Times again, and then I said, you know what? We're so easily impressed these days. We have impressions. We have opinions. I'm criticizing them for doing this, but what do I know? I don't have data. You know, I don't know how. Maybe they're not even biased. Maybe it's just my impression. It's worth, you know, it's worth checking it out. And I really tried to come to this, you know, with fresh eyes and to see what's going on, to start monitoring it every day. And I told myself it was going to be 5 minutes a day, so it's not such a big deal. At the end of every day, you know, I committed to, I subscribed, you know, and I paid the subscription fee and everything. And I said, every night I'm just going to go in and I'm going to look for articles and pieces about Israel, and you know, and I'm going to tweet about it. I'm going to kind of record it and tweet about it. And then it came out to a lot more than 5 minutes a day, I can tell you that. But I've really gotten way into it, and I think what I found out is super interesting.
How long you've been doing it?
You don't have to
4 months.
subscribe, by the way. There's a little bug on
really?
Android phones that if you have the New York
Don't
Times
tell them.
and you hit the square button where you go out to the different windows of the apps, then the block of the sign up disappears.
But she has
And
an
then you
iPhone.
undo
I have
it.
an iPhone.
Yeah.
And then you can scroll down and then it reappears.
I have an iPhone.
But there's a way
It's
around
50
it.
cents
You
a
could have
week.
been at work at the
I'm just telling
NSO.
you. Yeah,
What are
I'm
you
just
doing? You
telling
should
you.
be in the Mossad.
I like. Do they pay for hacks, like for finding hacks? But I'm wondering. You know, speaking of verifying assumptions, is there any kind of idea of like how important the New York Times is today? Because once upon a time they were a very important outlet, but since the digitization of media, it seems like maybe that's another assumption that needs to be kind of burst.
I think you're right. I think it's still a very important newspaper for journalists, at least. Okay, it's appreciated. You know, maybe not as much as it used to be, and there are a lot more outlets today, and a lot more, you know, a lot of podcasts and a lot of YouTube channels, and so, you know, so many new things. But I do think that, you know, sometimes it's not how many people read you, but the influence you have on other outlets. And, you know, if you're considered like an old school, very strict, very, you know, following the strictest journalism rules of journalism, then I think the New York Times still has that image. And I think it's a lot more influential than just, you know, how many people read them and
Than
who
the New
reads
York
them.
Post, for example.
Yeah, a little bit different. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I do think it's very important, and it's true that a lot of media outlets are biased against Israel. You know, I can't monitor everything. I can hardly keep up with this. It's hard. It's harder than it sounds. It's harder than I thought. Harder and more time consuming than I thought in the beginning. But it's something that I can do. And, you know, I've already done 4 months. I'm going to complete the year, and then I'm going to have enough data to say something, you know, sufficient, real, not just assumptions, not just impressions. I'm going to have real numbers.
What's the system? Is there like a rating system for how anti-Israel, how objective, or how, like...
I tried to simplify it as much as I could, because, you know, I didn't want to get into something very statistical and super complicated. So all I do is as I see, first of all, what did we have? What was aired today on the site? How many stories about Israel? What were they? I read them. I see if they were, you know, if they had like, if they were more negative about Israel, if they were neutral, or if they were positive. And some of them are positive. I was surprised to find that, but there are positive stories about Israel.
About like a falafel stand in Tel Aviv.
You know, not just that.
No?
Let's say I was surprised, see, because that's impressions. And I also had that impression, but let's say last month there were a few positive stories about Naftali Bennett, the Israeli prime minister, who started, you know, to try to mediate between Russia and Ukraine.
That's probably Biden's administration pushing good stories to help Bennett.
Maybe, you know, anything I am a journalist myself, so I know how stories are combined and all this, give and take between sources and journalists. So maybe, but still, there are positive stories. It's not all bad.
Right.
So,
but two technical questions I
Yes.
have. So first of all, how Jewish is the New York Times today? If you know, and second of all, like there's the digital version and then
Right.
there's the print
right.
version.
I don't follow the print.
Okay,
I
so
follow only the
only the
digital.
digital.
Yeah, I can't
Okay.
follow
Isn't
the print.
everything that's in print on the
yes,
digital?
Yes.
Yes, but what I read when I wrote this intro,
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole book about the New York Times and the Holocaust, and what
Yeah.
they analyzed is there were stories about the Holocaust, but they weren't on the first page,
Right.
and they were buried. So
You're
that's
right.
also a question.
But first of all, I think a lot of emphasis has been put on the web. Not just the New York Times, but every media outlet. So, and there's the homepage, okay, and where it's located on the homepage. I monitor the homepage, the opinion page, the world page, and the Middle East page. That's what I look for. If something is on the arts in the arts section, it's less interesting to me. So,
But do you see location on the
I
page?
see the location, but you know what? I don't monitor that.
Because it changes throughout the
It
day.
changes throughout the day, and it's very hard to follow. And so I don't even say if it was on the homepage or just on the Middle East page. I count the stories about Israel. I see if they're negative, neutral, or positive. But the more important thing that I found out is what is not published. And that, I think, if I'll give you the numbers, the first 4 months, there were 72 stories about Israel. 38 of them were negative. 11 of them were positive. That's, it's 15%. It's not so bad. And 23 were neutral. So it doesn't
What's a
sound
neutral?
so... It like just a regular kind of reporting that's not biased pro or anti-Israeli. It's just something that, that I would say, yeah, they're pretty much correct in the way that they portray it. So it is my opinion of what it is, but because I'm a centrist, and I guess my opinion is okay.
Okay.
So in that sense. But what's more interesting is the amount of stories that do not make it into the paper. And with that, when you follow that, you start seeing that there's a system here, okay? Anything that has to do with Palestinian violence or terrorism doesn't get in. It just doesn't get in. It doesn't exist as far as the New York Times readers are concerned. If you only read that paper, then there's no terror. The word is hardly ever mentioned, in the context of the conflict. And terrorists are gunmen or
Rioters.
just
something.
maybe riot. That's extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They're usually Palestinians. Even if they were planning to carry out a mass murder kind of suicide bombing or shooting or whatever, they're still, most of the time they're going to be called Palestinians. Let's say this month when IDF and security forces went into Jenin after all the shootings and 14 Israelis died, then there were 14 Palestinians were killed during this raid. Most of them, I think it was like 11 or 12 of them, were planning to attack Israelis and murder them, but they're still referred to as Palestinians, which is like innocent. It's like they had no bad intentions, so there's no terror. I tried. Aside of the monitoring, I also check out words in the archive. I do the search and see, like a year back, how many times was Hamas mentioned? How many times was Hezbollah mentioned? How many times was Iran mentioned? How many times was Israel mentioned? And that's pretty crazy. Let me give you some more numbers about that. The word Hamas appeared in the past 4 months since the beginning of 2022 29 times. None of them in the headline or the subheadline.
Buried inside the last
Buried
paragraph
inside.
of the...
And the number of times that Hamas and terror appeared together is 3. I didn't check this out, but it's probably in comments of Israeli officials. The word Hezbollah appeared 11 times since the beginning of the year. And this is a funny little story. I looked for the word Lebanon. I was like wondering, maybe they don't even report that much about Lebanon. And I just kind of checked to see how many times the word Lebanon appeared. And I saw that the last story about them was in February. And it was like a trivia test, a trivia quiz kind of thing. Okay. I was like, okay, let's see how much I know about Lebanon. I started doing the quiz and there were all kinds of questions. And, it's pretty long. It's I don't know, maybe 600, 700 words, something like that. It tells of the financial crisis. It does mention the big warehouse that exploded a few years ago. But the word Hezbollah does not appear in this quiz,
And they run the country, guys, if you don't know.
Yeah.
They run the country.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, how can you not mention this? It's like, I don't understand how you can, I'm not going to say pretend, but how you can say that you are informing and, it's like a learning channel. So what are you teaching? You're not really teaching what's happening. And this is a real problem. Israel has been mentioned 522 times in New York Times since the beginning of the year. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Iran was mentioned 336 times. It's also a lot, but it's a lot less.
But it's an anomaly, I think, because of the deal.
Yeah.
If it weren't for the deal,
they would be mentioned
they would be
less.
much less.
Probably.
Yeah.
Right. And this is during the time when, there's a lot of news. So the whole picture, I'm not saying that you can't be pro-Palestinian. It's fine. It's okay. It's totally legitimate to be pro-Palestinian, to think Palestinians deserve a state. I see it as a completely legitimate stand. But what's illegitimate, at least the way I see it, is not to tell the whole story. From what I've been seeing, and it's only 4 months, I will be doing it for a whole year, but from what I've been seeing, that there is a huge part of the story, more than half of the story, that is just not told systematically. It's not only the Israeli narrative. There are, let's say, the disengagement, okay? There's this paragraph that appears almost, I've run across it many times in the past few months. It appears in almost every piece that deals with the conflict, that tells the background. Okay, Israel conquered East Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria, the West Bank,
Gaza.
Whatever, and not Gaza. Yeah, in Gaza, but it doesn't refer to that. It refers to the West Bank. In 1967, it annexed these territories, although most of the world doesn't look at it as legitimate. This is their usual paragraph that just, it's kind of a copy-paste kind of thing. I also know that.
I had a short stint when I was a student at the Times of Israel as a breaking news editor, and we also had a paragraph like that about.
Sure.
And there's always those kind of paragraphs. And
Definitely.
the truth is, if you think about it, it's kind of fucked up that a news outlet has this paragraph that they tell all their reporters to stick. I mean, that's the definition of trying to drive some kind of narrative.
Yeah.
Instead of letting people report on the
That's
facts.
true. You know what? I don't know if it's like the newspaper that says, "Okay, guys, use this paragraph," or that's just how they do it. Oh, maybe okay.
At the Times of Israel,
That's how
they
it
told
was.
us, take this
Okay.
paragraph, use it in any mention of I think it was the Castellet or whatever. They said any mention of the operation, this is the paragraph we use.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
I can't believe we lost you you could have been a leading journalist.
Pulitzer Prize, man. It's never too late. Never too late.
Right. So they have this paragraph, but it's as if nothing happened since 1967. It's been 50-something year, 50, what, 5? No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 55 years. Time flies when you're having fun. But yeah. Anyway, so many things have happened. I mean, there were so many negotiations with Yasser Arafat, with Abbas. There were so many offers. The one that I was talking about before, when Barak offered Arafat to finish everything and to call off the conflict, and it just blew to pieces. And there was a disengagement, which is a huge, huge, big deal in Israel, among Israelis, because some of them believe it was a fatal mistake. And some of them, I, by the way, think it wasn't a mistake. I think it was, even though we got Hamas there and they're shooting at us and there's the terror and everything, I think it's something that you need to try. I think Israel needs to strive for peace, and it always needs to try, to strive for peace. And sometimes it's going to hit a wall, but I think it was worth a try.
And there was also, I think people skip often the Oslo Accords.
Right.
Now when I get to Twitter argument with leftists on Twitter, and usually they say about the A territories that they're occupied.
Right.
But the A territories are not occupied.
I know.
They have complete sovereignty of the
Right.
PA, and people don't know that.
Right.
This is also
And
significant.
Gaza is completely not occupied.
Yeah.
I mean, for 17, how many is it? 17 years?
Yeah.
I think it's something like that. 15,
2006.
16.
Yeah, I don't.
Something like that.
We've spoken about this. For some reason, people still talk about the two-state solution as if it doesn't exist.
Right.
Like it
I mean,
already
we started.
exists.
Well, it semi-exists, because they do depend on us for all sorts of things.
That's their problem.
Right. No, well, it's not their problem. It's always our problem too. I mean, when they have a problem, it's always our problem
Yeah,
too.
but I'm saying the idea that they're dependent on us, meaning the Gaza Strip is fully under their control.
Right. They could have done completely different things with it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of money there, especially in the beginning, loads of money, which was used in a terrible, in the worst way, really. I mean, it was embezzled. It was used to promote terror, to build weapons, to fight, to push hatred, to torture people, their own people. I mean, so it's terrible. And I think all this does not appear anyway. I mean, we as Israelis know it. But what I keep thinking is, in Israel, we can be a left-winger or a centrist or a right-winger, but everybody knows what's going on. I mean, if they're going to be shooting from Gaza, you're going to know whether you're super pro-Palestinian and you're Ofer Kasif, okay, which is the MK who is like... He's more pro-Palestinian than any Palestinian you can find, but he will know that they were shooting. He will have an interpretation of it, okay, his own interpretation, but he'll know that there were rockets. He will know that there is terror. He will know that, there's, how do you say konenut? I forgot the word.
Alert.
Yeah.
Yeah, that there's
High
a huge
alert.
high alert because, many terrorists are really into blowing people up during Passover Eve. They will know this. They will say, oh, it's our fault or whatever. They'll have their explanation. But Jewish Americans don't know this. They're not here. They're not exposed to this. Here, every media outlet will report it, whether it's left or right.
If
In
they
the
have
States,
a Haaretz app or something, they get a push.
Haaretz will mention, yes.
They'll get a push. And
They-
I think most Jewish Americans above 40, 50 maybe would probably have either Times of Israel app or no, maybe I'm...
I don't know. You know what? I don't know. I tried to find the readership. I couldn't find any data about it. But what I'm worried about is the younger Jewish Americans.
Yeah. But do they read it? Maybe they do read the New York
I
Times.
think they're influenced by it for sure. I did see a story a couple of months ago in the New York Times that shocked me completely. I have to tell you about it, okay? It's this young Jewish girl. She's the age of my older daughter. She's 26 years old. And she started working for a synagogue, a pro-Israeli synagogue, okay? And as a teacher.
Where?
I don't remember.
Okay.
But she started working for the synagogue. And about a week after she started, the the rabbi there found out that you know what, maybe it was during the operation last May that the fighting started, that she posted something in her blog saying that she's anti-Zionist, and that Israel stole Palestinian land, and she was like saying really, really very extreme things about Israel. And he talked to her the next day, and he said, I would just like to know, are you pro-Hamas? Because this is what you were saying. And she was like, well, I have my opinions, but if you're pro-Israeli, I will keep them to myself, okay, and I won't teach them to the students. Anyway, about a week later, something didn't work out. She was fired. Frankly, I don't even know why they took her. If they're a pro-Israeli synagogue, it's something that you would ask, isn't it? I mean, anyway, she's suing the synagogue for firing her for her beliefs. Oh, yes, she did mention the word genocide, okay? Israel is performing genocide on the Palestinians, which is one of the worst libels that are told about Israel, because Israel was built on the remains of a real horrible, most horrid genocide, which was the Holocaust.
Which was done by a Jew, by the way. Hitler was a Jew, if you didn't know about it.
According to Putin, So I think it's the worst libel, because the truth is that there are a lot more Palestinians today than there were in 67, and there is no genocide. And, you can say a lot of bad things about Israel, but at least tell the truth and don't spread fake news and libel. So
the piece was obviously very warm towards her.
It made her into a heroine.
Hero.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. It was like, there was a photo. She was sitting very, very troubled and very, it's like, I'm a journalist, and I used to be an editor, a magazine editor, and I know how, if you want to make someone look like a hero, there are very certain things that you need to do in order to make them look like that, and it's definitely what they tried to do with this girl. And I was shocked, first of all, because the genocide was just mentioned, by the way, kind of. She said that they were performing genocide, but nobody even, maybe a little footnote that it's not true, that it's fake news, that it never really happened, even if people believe it. Nothing. It's just there.
Wow.
And it stays there. And I'm thinking, young Jewish people, the age of my daughters in America, are reading this, are influenced by this. They also want to be portrayed as heroes.
They're Googling probably Israel genocide and reading loads of...
Yeah, and it becomes a truth without any... It's such a huge lie, really. I mean, it's got no relevance to anything, and it's not based on any facts. And it was just terrible for me. And, I started thinking that this agenda, which is supposedly pro-Palestinian. I'm saying supposedly because I think personally that if you really were pro-Palestinian, you would be against Hamas, for instance. I mean, because...
Would you?
Yeah. I think, I'm not against Palestinians having a state, but I know that Hamas won't be able to head this state. So as long as Hamas insists on shooting and investing all its funds in weapons and, wanting war and wanting to kill Jews, there's not going to be a Palestinian state. It's very clear to me. So
we had a whole section of Zionism that indulged in the same tactics back in the day. They were the minority in the Zionist movement, but so I'm not sure that if you are really pro-Palestinian, playing the devil's advocate here,
okay,
if it is a fact that you need to be against Hamas. First of all, if it were so, then I don't think, then why is it so popular? Many Palestinians support Hamas.
That's true, but I gotta just stop you for a second. From what I know and from surveys that I have seen, first of all, in Gaza, you can't be not pro-Hamas. If you say anything against Hamas, you'll be, if you're lucky, you'll be put in jail. If you're not lucky, they're going to slaughter your family and then kill you. That's how it's done. So you can't be not pro-Hamas.
There are surveys that are done that are anonymous.
In West Bank. In the West Bank. I've seen surveys in Gaza too.
Gaza. But there was the best survey. There were once upon a time there was elections there where Hamas won.
But that's 17 years ago. From what I remember, the real popularity of Hamas went down in Gaza because they understood that it's going nowhere. And the popularity is up in the West Bank because they don't know any better. Okay? Because they know that what they have is corrupt and rotten and bad. So they want to change the government, just like we do here, when the government is corrupt and we want to change it. So they're thinking maybe Hamas will be better.
I would say at least that we don't have proof that Hamas is not popular in Gaza.
That's true. We don't have solid proof.
And it's safe to assume that if they weren't popular, they weren't ruling Gaza because there would have been an uprising sooner or later. So at least some popularity they enjoy. And I don't know, but I have to ask you, because you were saying earlier that it is okay for a news outlet to have an agenda. Mm-hmm. So that struck me as weird.
Okay, I'll tell you why. What I'm thinking is we kind of got a little mixed up between facts and opinions. And it's okay to have opinions. It's okay to have an agenda. It's okay to push an agenda as a news outlet. But you can't have opinions generating facts. Facts should generate opinions. And the moment that you let your opinion lead the way that you report things, and that's why you stop reporting at least half of the things as New York Times is doing, and you only report a certain narrative, and you only let on board reporters and writers that this is their view, then you're not really diverse. You're not really showing a full picture, and you're not really doing journalism.
But isn't that a consequence of having an agenda?
No, because I think if you portray the facts as they are, okay, if New York Times was telling the whole story as it is and not silencing such a big part of the story and pushing some sort of agenda as a part of this reporting, I would say that's legitimate, even if I didn't agree.
What do you mean?
I mean that the views on the op-ed pages are for one state solution, for example, or whatever.
But why is it okay for an outlet to be so biased?
That's what I'm saying. This is not biased.
No, I mean, even if
you were reporting everything, all the facts.
But then in the opinion, you don't, instead of having 50-50 or 60-40, you do 90-10.
Again, it's kind of like you were saying about objectivity, meaning it's not necessarily an attainable goal, but it's something we should all strive for.
Exactly.
Shouldn't we strive for an agendaless outlet? Shouldn't that what all news outlets shouldn't that be their North Star?
That's just the news, okay? If you only want hard news and hard facts, definitely, yeah.
No, but in opinion as well. But understanding that the, quilt of human thought is diverse and there are many different angles, and trying to capture as much of it as possible in order to give your readers a accurate, again, but it's fact. Like the idea behind an opinion page should be, I'm trying to give an accurate representation of the mapping of human opinion.
I don't think that is the definition of of the object of the opinion page. I do think it's the definition of the object of reporting, of journalism and reporting. Let's, I would like to differentiate between these two things. There is reporting, the stories. What happened today? What happened today is in Israel. If I only tell 25% of what happened today in Israel, and, I continually only tell this quarter of the story, I'm not telling the story. I'm not really reporting. I'm pushing an opinion through reporting. It's okay to push an opinion, but not through reporting. because then you're not reporting. That's what I'm saying.
I still don't understand why it should be okay for a news outlet to push an opinion. Why is that okay?
I think it's okay. I mean, if you wanted a newspaper that would push another opinion.
So then I wouldn't open a newspaper. I would open a media outlet. Well,
today it's a little different, I think. Okay, today it's a little different. The New York Times is more old school journalism. And that's why it's so...
It presents itself as such.
Exactly. It's not really...
But it's not.
It's not.
But even if it were objective on the news and biased on the opinion, I would
live with it. I personally would live with it, because what I think is terrible, I mean, let's go back to this 26-year-old, okay? Because she represents something, in my opinion. She represents a lot of young Jewish Americans who do not want anything to do with Israel because they believe that Israel is monstrous and it's mean and cruel and they're anti-Zionist. And she went and said, I don't think that, Zionism and being Jewish go together. They don't necessarily go together. And I mean, I'm like reading this and I'm saying, what are you talking about? I mean, for 2,000 years, Jews were outside of Israel, and praying every night next year in Jerusalem. So that's Zionism, that's what Zionism is built on. So how can you say that being Jewish has nothing to do with Zionism? It just shows that she doesn't know what she's talking about. And it was really sad to me because I don't think she's stupid. I don't think she's illiterate. I don't think she's not intelligent. I think she's misinformed. She's misinformed and she doesn't realize it.
I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that she isn't stupid. She might be stupid.
Well,
there's a big possibility she's dumb.
I don't know.
I'm just saying.
Somebody
there's a chance that she's very unintelligent.
No, I don't think so, because if I look at the numbers, and there are too many young American Jews that I'm sure are not all stupid. I'm sure they're not all stupid. I think they're misinformed. That's what I think, because of biased reporting.
Eitan moves uncomfortably on his chair.
This is why I believe that reporting should be different.
I don't want to define them as humans. Yeah. I don't know if they're entirely stupid, but I think on the subject but what is stupid if not misinformed, right? I mean, you're saying they're not unintelligent, they're not knowledgeable.
Look, I think, you were in journalism, so you're obviously
I wasn't. It was like a student job.
Okay. Well,
he glimpsed.
I think people who are really interested in current events, then they kind of work at it. They go and look for the information, and they won't just read one outlet. They're going to read at least a few and maybe follow some journalists on Twitter or whatever. And, they're going to want the information. They're going to want information from a few sources, and, and maybe they'll run across different kind of information. But most people, they just kind of want to know what happened today. They're not going to be so obsessive about, okay, what happened in Israel today? I mean, most Jews in the United States, if I have to guess, okay, they're living their lives, doing whatever they're doing, teaching Pilates. What do I know what they're doing? Everybody's doing something different, right?
Running Hollywood in the banks.
Yes, right. controlling, not running.
Washington.
Yes. So, they're living their lives, and they want to think of themselves as educated and intellectual, and this is considered an intellectual and intelligent media outlet. So, if they're going to want to know what's going on, they're going to go on the website, they're going to, get the push notices, they're going to read the paper maybe, although not the young ones probably. But if they do that, they're going to be misinformed about what's going on in Israel. And definitely not realize it.
That's an unintelligent way of going about being informed. Saying, I want to be informed.
What do you read? What do you read?
When I care to be informed about something.
How do you get information?
Online, but I look at many different outlets. If I care to be informed about something, I'm not going to develop an opinion about Myanmar, and what's going on there before I've read about it. Before I've read a little bit of the history, before I've read a couple of different outlets.
And are you into knowing what's going on there?
No.
Okay.
But Ukraine, Russia...
exactly. Look, I mean, let's take the war in Russia and Ukraine. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think most people don't really know what's happening there.
Yeah.
Okay, even if they look for information, because there's so much misinformation.
Exactly. And if I develop an opinion there, I think I will be able to say about myself, I have done something stupid. You get what I'm saying? If I develop an opinion before doing due process, and trying to find due diligence and trying to find out what's actually going on there, that's a stupid thing. Now, again, I might not be a stupid person, but it's stupid.
It's not. Yeah, but it's. I see what you're saying.
We ask a lot of people.
Yeah, I'll tell you my problem with your theory. Oops, sorry about that. I'll tell you my problem with your theory. Okay, my problem with your theory is that I believe in the future of the Jewish people. Okay. And I, when I was a girl, we were just talking about it before we started recording. But you told me about your childhood, and I said that I grew up in New Jersey for a few years. My father used to work for the Jewish Agency, and when I was like 10, we went to New Jersey for a few years, and it was really, really hard for me because it was in the 70s, so it was a really long time ago. There was you couldn't even call anybody if you wanted to be in touch with your old friends. You had to write like this aerogram, which would take like 6 weeks to get there. And then you have to wait until they answer and another 6 weeks until you get an answer. And I was so detached and so, out of place. And I didn't know how, I didn't know how to speak English. I had to learn it. And I had a lot of problems. And then at some point, my parents transferred me to a Jewish school. And it really saved me as a 12-year-old girl. And then I think I discovered how Jews all over, whether they're stupid or smart or neither, they have a connection. They have a connection. And I think this connection is super important because there are only 15 million Jews in the world. And, we're not a huge religion or people or whatever you want to call it. And I think that Jews knowing how to stick together is very important to the future of Judaism. And I think what's happening in the New York Times is working against this. I don't think they're doing it on purpose, but I think that's what's happening. I don't think they're doing it on purpose.
Why do they do it then?
I don't know. There could be 100 million reasons. It could be, from the owner, from the publisher, from his friends, from his business partners. Who knows? I don't know. I can guess until tomorrow. What I know is
assuming it's not on purpose is weird.
I think it happens to everybody. I think it could happen to anybody. Okay, to any news outlet. You go with some sort of line, and I see it also now and again in Israeli news outlets that they go too far with their agenda, and they get confused. You at some point when you become a little bit more extreme, like every day, at some point you cross a line, and it's a very slow crossing of the line. You don't realize that you've crossed the line. You're doing what you have been doing for a long time, and you're just kind of developing, right? You're just taking it a little bit farther. And at some point, it becomes too extreme, and it's not true anymore, and it can cause a lot of damage. And because you remember where you started from, you think you're doing the right thing.
I have to disagree because I feel like a lot of I mean, I totally agree with your analysis of the New York Times, but I think with the reasoning behind it and you're taking too much of a passive approach to things. And my problem with the whole misinformed and the New York Times is trying to drive a wedge between the Jewish, I mean, it might be true about the New York Times, but it takes a lot of the responsibility out of the individual's hands, meaning like the Jewish population in America is simply misinformed, and that is their only sin. And I think that there's more to their sin. I think their sin is one that they're doing willingly, and that they're doing to a certain extent consciously. Yeah, they are choosing to hold certain opinions and certain views about the Jewish state, even though they are Jews in and of themselves.
Right.
And
that's terrible. I think it's terrible to be faced with this choice. Okay? You know what? If I were an American Jew, I can guess that I wouldn't turn against my people. Okay? I don't know. I can't really know. It's something that I'm guessing, but I haven't lived that life, so you don't really know what you would do in a certain situation unless you're really faced with it. But what I'm saying is the Jews shouldn't face this choice. The mere facing of this choice is something that should not be presented to Jews, and I think that's the sin of the New York Times and its likes.
But we can't expect the world not to present us
Of course
with the
we can.
option of evil.
Of course we can.
Right?
No, well,
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but
I
they're
don't know
not
if you're comfortable
evil.
with that word, but
But
like,
they're not evil.
no, but what I'm saying, I took it to that on purpose because it gives it that biblical context, meaning
Mm-hmm.
the world is full of good and evil. The world is full of like the right choice and the wrong choice, and
Yeah.
you can't expect for the wrong choice to be,
I agree with you, but I think the Jews have been faced with this kind of choice forever. I mean, they used to, during the Inquisition, if they didn't change their religion, they would be tortured, killed, or I don't know what. It was really terrible. During the Holocaust, we know what happened. And there's so many examples of this. So we're supposed to be over that. This is not where we are today in 2022, okay? We're supposed to be intelligent. We're supposed to be pro-minorities. We're supposed to, not face people with such choices. We're supposed to be like that, but we're not. That's what bothers me. So, you could blame it on the Jews that are making the wrong choice. But too many of them have been making the wrong choice, in my opinion, in the past 10 or 20 years. The younger ones, the Jews. I mean, Jews my age, I think, are still making the right choice, most of them. But my daughter's ages, I don't know about that, and that really worries me. And I don't think it's stupidity and or something like that. I think that too many of them are faced with this choice that they have to choose. You have to choose between being an intellectual Democrat and between being pro-Israel. And
It's not
that
only
is not
intellectual
a
Democrat.
fair choice.
Have a career in academy or in arts.
I agree.
You can't have a career, I think, in
Yeah.
academy or arts in America if you're pro-Israel.
Well, it's harder in
It's
some
harder.
places, for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. That it paints this like this choice between, like, they don't have a choice. It kind of paints it in a way that they don't have a choice. Like, you can either choose a life where you're part of the intellectual elite and you have all the opportunity in the world, or you choose the opposite and you're destined to a life of destitution and like and no opportunity and poverty. And that's not where the States is right now. I mean, you can have welfare and live a happy life and live wonderfully.
Yeah, but some people are weaker and some people are more vulnerable. And, I'm thinking of students going on really good campuses, for example, and, being pro-Israeli is considered a crime there, and you're an outcast. And, you want to be part of the students, of the parties, of the fraternities, or, whatever. And it's just impossible.
Forget pro-Israel. Like I imagine being like a girl your age, going to a college or high school in Los Angeles, and coming with the MAGA.
Being a girl whose age?
No, in the
okay.
last
Like
other
being-
ages. No,
Yeah.
Okay.
not your 1 week old
Yeah.
girl.
Okay.
You go to a high school in Los Angeles, Jewish
Okay.
high school, with a MAGA
Yeah.
hat.
Yeah.
Forget Israel even. You can't do it. You simply cannot do it, right?
Yeah, which is why you shouldn't live in California. But
Okay, but it goes to many Jewish
there's a lot of
communities.
reasons you shouldn't live in
It's not
California.
only California. I don't think you can do it in many Jewish high schools.
In Jewish high schools.
Jewish communities, synagogues throughout them, right?
Yeah.
So,
But that's what I'm saying. It's a conscious decision
Yeah, to
by
detach-
members of the Jewish community to attach themselves to the intellectual elite instead of what's right, in my opinion.
I agree with you, but what I'm saying is, first of all, some people...
It's kind of similar. Sorry, it's kind of similar to what happened in Germany in the 30s. I mean,
Right.
To ignore what's going on with the Jewish people because you prefer to be a cultured German.
Yeah. And you know what happened to them? They also got killed.
Yeah.
So it didn't really help them because there was this whole racial theory behind it, and it didn't really matter.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So I understand what you're saying. But I think there will always be people that are going to feel more vulnerable, and they will prefer to belong to some other group than to their Jewish group, which is, I guess, reality. And I don't think it's stupidity. I think it's like it's just some people are just like that. What I'm saying is that if you encourage this as a media outlet, that is a sin, in my opinion.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is that interests me less. You know what I mean? And I wonder if, as a state, we should mature to a point, and I bet you wouldn't agree with me, where we should say to the Jewish world beyond, which is very antithetical to what Israel, the line that Israel takes today and that it's taken in the past, but to say to the rest of the Jewish world, either you're with us or goodbye.
And what will you achieve by that? Let's say half of them are going to say, you know what? I don't know. Most of them are going to say, how
many resources and effort and
you're
and energy goes on trying to convince?
I think we're not. I think we haven't really put our energy in the right places. I got to tell you, I don't think Israel is doing enough. I think it hasn't been doing enough for at least 10 years. My father used to do this when I was a girl. Okay, this was his job. He used to explain Israel to American Jews and to so I kind of grew up on these messages. And I think that Israel has become too involved in its inner politics, and it's not doing enough to, to bring together the Jews of, the states, especially because most Jews live there, 6 million, something like that. It's really divided between America and Israel. There are more here and there, but most Jews live in Israel and in America. And if we're going to come to them and say, hey, you guys, you're either with us or without us, and, we're going to feel pretty good about ourselves for a little while, but then we're not going to have them anymore. And I think we're going to be weaker, and I think it's not going to do us a lot of good. And I think that, and something, and then we're letting evil win, because if there are media outlets that actually promote this tear between American Jewry and Israeli Jewry, I think they should pay the price. Why should we pay the price? We should be working smartly. We shouldn't be, putting, posing ultimatums to other Jews, which, their lives are complicated. What do you mean you're either with us or without us? It's, their views are different. We should talk to them. We should bring them back. I'm sure we can bring at least half of them back to believe in us. Some of them are going to be extremists. Some of them are going to choose, the academy or whatever, or being pro-Muslim, or I don't know what. Okay, but at least half of them could be our friends.
Could be saved.
And very important friends of ours, and a part of the future of the Jewish people. And if we're just going to say, we don't need you guys anymore. No,
not we don't need you. We would love to have you. But, it's kind of like reaching a mature relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Stage in a relationship where you're not dependent, or when you're in negotiations for a job, right? Not needing the other is an important part of negotiating or maturing to a point of independence. I don't think we should negotiate
with them.
We shouldn't be this idea that we need the Jews of the diaspora.
But we do.
I don't think so. I think that, first of all, many of them aren't Jewish really in the end. Meaning they don't lead Jewish lives. They marry non-Jews, and the Judaism is going to dissipate within a generation or two, if it hasn't already. Meaning they don't lead Jewish lives already today. And most of them, even the ones that do, if they remain in the diaspora, their Judaism is going to be gone. Even if they want to keep it. Even my friends that marry Jewish and raise their kids Jewish, those kids probably not going to marry Jewish. And if they're
Unless
not,
you're going to start working at it right now.
but why?
Because it's the future of the Jewish people. You want
No, but
more
the
Jews.
future
You
of
don't
the
want
Jewish
less.
people is here. I want more Jews
no,
here.
No, because we need the United States. We need the lobby of the Jews in the United States. We need the lobby of the Jews elsewhere. You know,
Some would argue we don't need the lobby of the Jews in the United States. It only harms us.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think we need it. I don't buy that. I think we do need it, and I think it's very presumptuous. Yeah, but we're better off having it. We're better off having it, and I don't think we should do something that would, in the end, maybe make us, fine, we don't have to deal with this anymore, because it's really, it's very upsetting, but it will make us weaker.
It's not like, you're right. If it was just, fine, whatever, we're sick of it. If it came from a place of exhaustion, then fine. And if there were no benefits, then fine. But I think some of our worst enemies are us, meaning some of the people, like we mentioned in the intro, right? Some of the people that are driving this anti-Zionist movement in the United States, again, and this goes back to the New York Times. I don't think the New York Times is at fault for where the Jewish American community is at intellectually. Mm-hmm. And so
I think
it's stopping to pander to our worst enemies, which sometimes are ourselves.
But what I'm saying is it's contributing. I don't think it's the New York Times is responsible for this, but I think it's contributing, and it's not taking responsibility for this contribution, and that is what I'm doing. Okay. That's what I'm doing, because I want to put a spotlight on that, because I think it's illegitimate to do that. To a very small people that in the history has been so persecuted. We're less persecuted now, but but I think it's illegitimate to do that to the 15 million, to try and tear them apart even more.
That I can get on board with. Ultimately, I think shedding light on a lie is the right and the good thing to do. But I think that maybe the objective should be shedding light on a lie.
That's what it is.
Wherever you're showing truth, you're doing a good.
Yeah.
But it's on the Jewish community to see that, meaning not for them.
No, but what I'm saying is that I want to go to the, if I have a message to the Jewish community in the United States, then I'll say, look, you guys, even if you're anti-Israeli, maybe just check yourselves out. Maybe it's because you're misinformed. Maybe you haven't gotten the true information. So at least be open to that, Be open to that and try to read elsewhere, try to get more information, try to see the true picture.
Podcast.
Exactly.
That's the
for
first
starters.
Step. Yeah. That's the first step.
Yeah.
And the last.
So where are you going with the project?
First of all, I'm going to I've committed to a year, so I've done 4 months up until now, so I'll finish the year. I'm thinking maybe there's a book in it. I don't know. Maybe at the end of the year I'll have a book, which will also,
I wonder if it would make the New York Times bestseller list.
Okay, I wouldn't bet on that, but who knows? But I think I have a message that I really do want to portray and to relay, and I do want it to reach Jewish people, especially young Jewish people. And I want it to also reach the New York Times. I want them to see what they're doing. I think what they're doing is illegitimate.
Absolutely.
So when the book is out?
Well, at the end of the year. Let's wait until
we'd love to have you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. And really, I think you deserve kudos for doing this. I think it really is a great effort and a great objective.
It's amazing that nobody did it.
I'm just doubtful about the American Jewish community, but I think any time you shed light on something like this, it's a powerful thing. So.
Yeah, hopefully.
Nice work.
And guys, the cool thing is you tweet about this in English on your Twitter.
Right.
So if people follow you on Twitter,
what's
the handle?
Absolutely. It's Lilac Sigan. That's my name.
CH you write it?
No, with
Without
a C.
an H.
Lilac.
Okay.
When I was a teenager in New Jersey, nobody could say lilac. It was like it was a horror. So I started using lilac then.
Okay.
And now when I go to California, everybody says, "Oh my God, I love your name. It's such a cool name."
It's like I have a buddy in California whose name is Iftach. So
Yeah.
his name
Oh.
in English was Yifatach. So
Okay.
he just went with
He
Jeff.
won. He won. Okay.
He was like, Jeff.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lilac Sigan, Sigan, right? On
Yes,
Twitter.
On Twitter, and I would love it if you'd follow me and look at what I come up with.
Very cool.
Amazing.
And your novels are not translated to English, right?
Well, actually, one of my last one is, and I'm now working with an agent to find a publisher. So wish me luck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So stay tuned.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you
It
for
was
having
really
me.
fascinating. And yeah, guys, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, we accept donations. Go to 2ngb.com/donate. Also follow us on Instagram, on Twitter,
Everywhere else.
YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube.
Yes.
That's it.
Thank you. Bye,
See you in
guys.
the next one. Bye, guys.
Bye.